Hey everybody, I just got back from the theater a couple hours ago after going to see Dune 2, Dune Part 2, and I have to admit this movie was really, really, really good. And anybody that has any sort of interest in sci-fi or just the visuals in this movie were absolutely amazing. The sound was so good. You have to see it in a theater. I definitely would recommend you see it in a theater because the way it looks and the sound, the way it hits you, it's like you're in a war zone. It's crazy. It's like the sounds come, everything's are coming at you. You're seeing it, and like I just saw it in a normal theater, but I can't even imagine what it would be like in one of those like like not 3D, but those moving theaters or those new like I can't even imagine how good this would be in that. But just the sound is just booming in this movie, and the soundtrack is just like they're hitting you with these visuals and the sound that it's like you can't help but be totally engaged in the movie. And like as somebody, I have a bit of ADD, so it's hard to keep my attention when the movie's not that good. But this movie really kept my attention. It was like it's so in your face, like there's so many big scenes. Like you see these scenes with these like war type scenarios, and it's all very cool. Um, it's just like the characters were there weren't boring characters. The good characters were interesting and they were cool and you could relate and you got behind them. And the bad characters, they had depth to them. They were cool characters. There was a lot of like the visuals on this movie was just really good. It's just like there's so many war scenes where it's just like hundreds of thousands of people, and it really made you feel like you were in the war, and it really there's an interesting story going on, and it made you feel kind of emotional at a lot of parts, like excitement, like you really felt like you could really get behind this main character, like he was really like a brave guy that's just he's just like the chosen one, and he's really both him and the female lead, he's the main character, and the female lead, the right there, she's also really good. And it's just, it was so cool when he got on like this. Yeah, it was just, I don't want to give any spoilers, but actually, you know what, I'm gonna give a spoil I'm gonna I'm gonna start with a couple spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, then you might want to tune out. But they're gonna be very, very small spoilers. They won't ruin any plot lines or anything. So okay, so one thing I did see coming, like when I first sat down, I was thinking, okay, what's going to happen in this movie? I remember thinking there's probably going to be a sword fight at the end between the main character and the and the bad character, and sure enough, that happened. And it kind of when it was happening, I was kind of thinking there has to be better ways to end movies, because there's been so many movies where it just ends like that, where the good guy and the bad guy finally meet up and they have this big little sword fight for 5 minutes. And it's like there has to be better ways to end movies. This has been done too many times. That was one of the complaints I had with this movie. But it wasn't a major complaint. It didn't go on for too long, but it was kind of predictable that it was going to go there. Which I've kind of like, I remember thinking when I was there, I was like, oh, come on, really? We're doing this? Because I like envisioned that was how it was going to go. But another thing that I will say is that Christopher Walken was in this movie, and there he is right there. Just funny I bring him up, but Christopher Walken was in this movie, and I have to admit all the other characters made sense, but to me, Christopher Walken just felt like he was Christopher Walken playing somebody. It just didn't really. It just kind of took away from the realism. Most of the other characters, with the exception of Josh Brolin, were like unknowns. Like you don't think of anything else they've been in really. They're not, they're not somebody that kind of takes you out of the movie. But when you see Christopher Walken in that part, if for some reason it didn't work for me, it was like, I don't know, it just didn't. He's a great actor and I love him in a lot of other movies, but this one it just felt kind of like he didn't fit into the character. It just seemed like Christopher Walken trying. It just didn't work for me. It took away from the realism. I think they could have picked a better person for that role. But overall, this movie was I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, which is very high. Considering I went in on just wanting to see a random movie. I didn't really think too much of it. I've been really enjoying sci-fi recently, so I wanted to see, I was like, oh, well, there's not much out, and this looks pretty cool. It's getting good reviews. I'll check it out. And I was really shocked at how good this movie actually was. I would definitely recommend everybody to see it, and I would recommend seeing it in theaters. Don't wait till it comes out, because I'm telling you, the sounds on this movie, they're just booming, and like the visuals combined with the sound in the theater is absolutely, it's crazy. You feel like you're in a war zone. Check it out. You have to check it out. It's definitely I would definitely give this a really high rate. You know, 8 out of 10. It's a 3-hour movie, but you know what? It doesn't feel like a 3-hour movie. Like when I went to see what was the last one? The Avatar from last year, Avatar whatever it was too. Um I was like, that one felt long, and it wasn't an enjoyable long movie. It was like I wanted to get out of there, and I didn't really, it didn't live up to it. Just the visuals were cool in Avatar, but it was not a good long movie that you were interested the whole time. Similar to Oppenheimer, both long, not great movies that got you kind of bored and you wanted out of there. This one really didn't go there. This one kept you kind of enthralled throughout the full movie, which is really interesting for me, like somebody who has like, you know, ADD a little bit, and it's hard to kind of sit that long through something. This when a movie can keep someone like mine attention for the whole 3 hours generally, that means it's a really kind of I see it as a really good and interesting movie, because it can really keep your attention, and it's definitely worth checking out. You know, that was the, what's this guy's name from wrestling? Geez, I forget his name. He was okay. He was pretty good in it. I'm not a huge fan of his. This guy here. I can't remember his name right now, but I'm not a huge fan of his movies, but he was pretty decent in that. He played a good villain that was really believable. And yeah, check the war scenes, just amazing. The visuals amazing. Everything was great. The sound is really killer in this. It's just that soundtrack, really, just the booming, like they hit you with some really, and this guy was good. He was a good he was like the ultra super villain that really kind of he played like a really, I don't know, like alpha villain that was really something that we haven't really seen you know, before. I don't think it was really good. Some of these female, this was kind of interesting the way they were discussing, you know, like it reminded me of like old school, like Egyptian politics back before, you know, like the way that they would have to win wars, and kind of think things through. And it reminded me like the bloodlines, and there's so much interesting stuff like that was put into this movie that made you think, you know. And it reminds me like that this type of stuff, even though this is a sci-fi movie, like this stuff has happened in history, and there is, you know, these big wars, and it's really interesting stuff. So check this movie out. Uh, um 8 out of 10 is definitely a high. I'm giving it a really high ranking, 8 out of 10. And check it out in theaters. You're gonna love it. The sound's great, visuals are great, story's great. It'll keep you entertained. And thanks for checking out the review, everybody. I hope you liked it, and I hope you agree. And if you know what, if you disagree or have anything to say, let me know in the comments. And please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you very much.